Thank you so much, Ashley. Pleasure to be with you all again. I always love presenting for local folks here in the Harrisburg area, which is home for me. Pleasure and excited to share an important topic today. So today we are doing fundraising planning, pitfalls, and pointers. So fundraising planning, it sounds very intimidating. Fundraising plan seems like this yet one more thing I have to do, like another document, another thing to produce. It's going to take weeks, months, and we're going to try to change that a little bit today by just kind of simplifying this process a little bit and making it a little easier, demystifying some things, and just giving you some simple tools that you can use to either begin fundraising planning or simplify it, make it easier, make it so it's not so tedious, is what we're really all about here today. So if you were to Google fundraising plan or sample fundraising plan, you're most likely going to get something that looks like this. I don't expect you to read this, it's very small, but I just want you to see the immensity of it. So it's going to look something like this, starting with an overview of the plan, maybe an executive summary. Then it gets into these sources and uses of funds, a budget, how we performed over the last few years, a whole nother page of that. Then we get into the description of our fundraising sources, more of those, our fundraising direction, outcomes, strategies for growth. Now our fundraising policies are even in here, fundraising implementation, how we're actually going to do this in all of our areas, grants, stewardship, planned giving. It just kind of makes me feel like this, right? It's just too much. It was a 18-page document, all text, that probably after somebody spent weeks putting this together, it's going to get a light little review, approved, and then just sit on a shelf and never really used. So this is why I think a lot of people don't go through the process. They think this is what's required. And it's really not the process I want to encourage. It's not the type of fundraising plan I like and want you all to use. So that's not what we're doing today. We're going to go through 4 fundraising planning pitfalls and 9 fundraising planning pointers. And including in that is a simplified planning process, especially for small community-based nonprofits, because I know that's mostly what we have on here today. If I have any big shops, you can use it too. You just might need to add on a little bit more complexity and detail. As always, I'll give you some additional fundraising resources, ways to connect with me, and we'll do your questions and comments at the end. If you have something pertinent as we're going along, as Ashley said, please feel free to throw that in the chat. Always welcome those, and if I see something that's pertinent, we can address that as well. But first, I see a few familiar names in the participant listing, but for those that I don't know or you don't know me, I'll tell you briefly who I am. I am a fundraiser. It is all I've ever done. I spent a 20-year career as a frontline fundraiser and have been acting as a fundraising trainer and coach for the last 5. I started my career in higher education at Dickinson, spent a number of years out at the Antique Automobile Club of America Museum in Hershey, and I had the honor of serving as the executive director for the Cultural Enrichment Fund, fundraising for the arts in the Harrisburg area for about a decade. From there, I started my own firm, Productive Fundraising, where we do fundraising training and teaching for primarily small community-based organizations. I'm a CFRE, Certified Fundraising Executive, and a master trainer and past chapter president with the Association of Fundraising Professionals. And I have the distinct honor of teaching the fundraising courses at both Temple University through their 10-week online fundraising certificate program and at Messiah University for their undergraduate fundraising courses. So that's me. I know fundraising. Don't attend any other topic that you see I'm teaching, just fundraising. Otherwise, it's going to be dangerous. But the first question you're going to have, slides, the free resources I mentioned, the recording, where do you get them all? So these slides and free resources are already posted for you at productivefundraising.com/resources. So that's the one keynote you need to make. That's not linked up from the front page. You have to know that /resources. And then you're just going to look for today's date, May 25th, Dauphin County Library System, and everything will be right there. It is busy spring conference and training season, so there's lots of other stuff posted there too. So feel free to peruse, grab anything that is of value and looks good to you. So, and then Ashley will be in touch with the recording. I know it'll most likely be on the library YouTube site, but we'll get you instructions on how to get back to that in some follow-up. So let's dig into it. Pitfall number 1. We already saw it. A long, wordy plan that no one wants to read. That long, big thing that took so much work for somebody to do that. I mean, that looked like weeks of work to me. And they did all of that, it gets approved, and it just sits there. It's not necessary. In most organizations, maybe with like a 50-person development team in higher education, we need that big beast. But not many places, not in small shops. So no long, wordy plans that no one wants to read. None of this, right? And where does that plan typically live? Once it's created, it tends to go here. Tends to go on the bookshelf, right next to another plan that we've created, that strategic plan that we created and hired that consultant and spent all that time 4 years ago. And then something that starts with a P and ends in emic happened and made our strategic plan kind of worthless because the world changed. It's sitting on that bookshelf too. So I don't want you to create something that just goes and gathers dust on a bookshelf. I want you to create a living document, something that you use every week, every day. That's the true value here. You have, even if you don't officially have a fundraising plan, you have most of the components of a fundraising plan. It just hasn't been all brought together in one place. And that's the beauty of the fundraising plan. It's the high-level document that lets us see everything in one place. And then there are sub-plans and other pieces that kind of feed into it. I'm sure you have some of those pieces. Maybe a communications calendar, an editorial calendar, a grant spreadsheet. All of these things feed into it. This is the high-level document we're talking about. And in what format is it saved? A lot of times we create the fundraising plan and then we press the button that PDFs it. I have a rule: never PDF a fundraising plan. Fundraising plan, as I said before, should be a living document. It should always be evolving. Every quarter, every month, we should be looking at it. Is this all still accurate? The world changes so quickly. I mean, we certainly saw that over the last 2 years, but even in normal times, the world changes quickly. Other opportunities come down our path. Our staff capacity increases, decreases. Volunteers come, go. Lots of things change on a month-to-month basis. So setting a fundraising plan for a year and expecting everything to go perfectly is just kind of a pipe dream. I've never seen it happen in 25 years of doing fundraising. So let's not PDF it. When I was a frontline development person, I had my fundraising plan shortcutted on my desktop, and it was always editable, right? Just go in, make changes, tweak it as we needed to go throughout the year so that it was always accurate and giving us the best chance for fundraising success. So pitfall number 2 is a static printed plan that lives on a bookshelf. Not what we want. Not what we want. We want a living document plan that is looked at monthly, weekly, daily. That's what we want. But what does it look like at most small nonprofits? When I start working with a coaching client or someone, a lot of times we say, where is your fundraising plan? Let me see your fundraising plan. And what do I get? It's not a broken slide. It is a blank slide because it just doesn't exist. There just isn't a fundraising plan. A lot of times we have these intentions, well, we know what we're doing, or we do the same thing every year. We have this calendar we follow that says what we do when. That's our fundraising plan. It kind of works, but what does it do? It creates the same activity every year, which hopefully creates the same results every year, but maybe sometimes something doesn't work. and we have some diminishing results kicking in. So the actual written document fundraising plan is what brings it all together, what allows us to be more successful. So pitfall number 3 is having no plan at all. No plan at all, which I see far too often. And as I said, you have the components of the plan, just maybe hasn't come together in the actual plan. And this results in lots of activity. When we don't have a set plan, we get caught up with, these ideas come. And okay, we're going to do this, but wait a minute, we need to do this. And we have to do that. And oh no, we forgot to do that. And there's a grant due next week. And we get into this feverish pace that I've seen so often, in my career. So many fundraisers that I've had the honor of serving with, I look back and they're no longer fundraisers. They kind of hit this burnout because they just couldn't be proactive. They were constantly reacting to whatever was coming. Board member has an idea, we should try this. Let's do this. Okay, I guess we're going to pivot and go do that. Oh, wait a minute, I need to go do this. It can become exhausting. So a fundraising plan allows us to be proactive rather than always being reactive, and gives us a tool to maybe be able to say no to certain things. So it also just stops this insanity of multitasking, which we're seeing here, which nobody can really do well. It's just not humanly possible to multitask well. Even if we think we're good at it, we're switching so often that we're losing some peak productivity. There's something called switching cost. I've seen anything from 17 to 63 seconds listed as the amount of time you lose in productivity when you switch tasks back and forth. So a proactive plan can allow us to eliminate or limit the amount of that. And ideally, it prevents us from getting to this point. Prevents us from just reaching that burnout and just spinning that hamster wheel over and over. Proactivity is a key thing. And, we run into this situation all the time. What's the first way that non-fundraisers suggest to raise money for a cause? So we show up at a development committee meeting, we have volunteers there, and we say, it's looking like we're going to be about $10,000 short on this year's budget. We didn't get a grant. We need to close this gap. What are ideas to do that? And we're going to hear, oh, we should hold an auction. We should have a golf tournament. We should do a 5K. It's always these events. We should do a second annual dinner because the first one was so easy and worked so well. So we get all these ideas. These take a lot of time and energy. We already probably have too many. And our donors just kind of end up feeling like this. They get a little bit of event fatigue sometimes. They have to show up at that same hotel ballroom 8 times a year and eat that same chicken and rice dinner. So we get it. Our fundraising plan allows us to be proactive rather than reactive. So when all these ideas come up, we can say, Sally, that's great. I'm thrilled that you've seen this event work really well in another organization. We could do that. But in our fundraising plan, we have all of these items slated for the next 6 months. What do you think we should not do so that we have the capacity to do that event? Oh, well, maybe we don't have the time to do that. Maybe we shouldn't go chasing down this time-consuming events path. Maybe instead we should double down on something we're already planning, or get a matching pool or some other tool to make something else more successful here. So it just allows us to have that conversation. But if we don't have a plan and somebody says, let's do this to close the gap, I guess we're doing that. So the plan allows us to be proactive. It also kind of acts like bad cop, right? The plan's the bad cop. We have to do what the plan says, and then we can be the good cop. So it's not, I'm just saying no because I'm being difficult or insubordinate or whatever. I'm saying no because it's not in the plan, and the plan is aligned to our capacity. So if we're going to do it, something has to change in the plan. We can do that, but we need to take a closer look at that and make sure we're not just going on a pipe dream or doing something else for the sake of doing something else. So that plan allows you to be proactive rather than reactive. That is our first pointer. All right, I want to walk through a simplified planning process. So how do we actually go about this? How do we create a plan that works for small shops, but is not that 18-page beast we saw in the beginning that no one wants to read, yet alone write? So let's dig in here. We have 3 steps for our fundraising planning process, and I'm going to get out of the way here. Evaluate, plan, and systematize. Pretty sure that's a real word. If not, I made it up. You know what I mean. Create a system around it so it actually happens. Evaluate, plan, systematize. Let's begin. Evaluate. So we can't start the planning process until we've evaluated what is actually happening and working in our shop. What do we actually do here? And for those of you with fundraising databases, with CRMs, it's going to have a reporting module, and there will be like 20, 30, 40 pre-created reports in there. There is no shortage of data, right? What do you look at? You know, it's overwhelmed. Do not print all of those reports and bring them to your conference room and spread them out and try to figure it out. You're just going to overwhelm yourself. I need data, but I want to have just what I need. I want to simplify it down. So for me, I am trying to avoid our final pitfall with it, which is analysis paralysis. Like too much data just creates overwhelm. And many of us are not, you know, trained statisticians, mathematicians. A lot of us are people. We want to go talk to the people and not be stuck doing all of this. So let's simplify it as much as possible. So pointer number 2 is use a simplified evaluation tool that does all the math for you. For some reason, fundraisers aren't always great at math either. I've been doing exercises on the whiteboard a couple times and heard chuckling behind me. And yes, my budget didn't add up correctly. So we're in the moment. We are people. So let's use this tool, a simplified evaluation tool that does the math for you. For this, I use the 9-point performance index. So this looks like a lot of stuff. I'm going to make it real easy. Comes out of a book. Do I have it? Yes, I do. We have the book today. So this is coming out of Fundraising, 2nd edition, Evaluating and Managing the Fund Development Process by Jim Greenfield. Jim wrote this, oh man, I'm going to say early 90s, well, late 90s, 99. Jim is still at conferences. He's an ACFRE, one of the advanced fundraising, certified fundraising executives. And I just saw him at the AFP International Conference in Las Vegas. Great guy, but I love this tool he created, the 9-point performance index. These are the indicators. For every way we fundraise, this is what we're going to look at. So the participants. So who gave versus the non-responders, people we solicited that didn't give. How much did it raise, the income? How much did we spend to raise it? How much did it cost to send that mailing, to hold that event? That's all we need. The items in red, those are our inputs. For each way you raise money, you just need those 4 things. How many people gave versus how many people didn't? How much did we raise? How much did we spend? Even a very simple spreadsheet, even an Excel spreadsheet or a very simple CRM should be able to track that. The other 6 items on there are just math, and we can have a spreadsheet do it for us. So calculating things like percent participation, what percent of people gave, the average gift, net income, income minus expense, the average cost per gift, how much did it cost on average to raise a gift, total cost of fundraising, and the one I love, return on investment. For the money we put into it, what was that return? What did that look like? So as I said, we can just have the spreadsheet do it for us. This is on the resources page. I apologize that it's pretty tiny looking here, but we have our performance indicators going down on the rows, and across the columns are going to be each of the ways you raise money. So column 1 might be my board appeal. Column 2 is my year-end appeal. Column 3 is my spring gala. Column 4 is my golf tournament. So each of the various ways we raise money, we put in those 4 things we need, and then it will do the math. And the beauty of this is that last row going across, it's going to show you your return on investment. And you can very easily see, where is my biggest return? For the investment in time and money, where do we get the biggest return? That's probably what we should be doing more of. And the one that shows the least, that's what we want to step back from. Maybe not do it all, but that's what we're going to get to next with our analysis, but not tons and tons of reports, something nice and simple. As I said, this is on the resources page for you to grab, customize it for you, make it work. The question I always get with this tool is, do I include staff time or don't I with that expense column? I actually encourage you, first just run it with straight expense. Don't put staff time in. And then run it with staff time. Estimate staff time and do it both ways. You're quickly going to see those fundraising events greatly reduce in return on investment when we factor in staff and maybe even volunteer time. So just a way to look at it differently, especially if you're in a situation where you maybe need to pair an event or two. Okay, pointer number 3, know your donor retention rate and make improving it a priority. So donor retention, keeping the donors we already have versus always working on acquisition, always trying to acquire new donors. Why is this so important? 43%. 43% is the average donor retention rate for all nonprofits in the US. It means the average nonprofit keeps less than half of its donors from year to year. And I don't have it in here today, but 29% is the average retention rate for first-time donors. So less than a third of donors make a second gift to an organization. So we need to make changing this a priority by focusing on donor retention and stewardship, making our donors feel like trusted partners rather than just dollar signs or piggy banks. I've seen organizations get this easily into the 50s, with work into the 60s, and my all-time record I saw was 78%. So it can be done. It makes fundraising so much easier and frankly, so much more enjoyable. Because I don't know about you, but I would rather say thank you and have a great conversation with a current donor than to ask somebody I don't know for a couple $100, right? We need to make sure that's in there. So calculating your donor retention rate. I have a worksheet on the resources page to help you do that. If you don't have a database that automatically calculates it, it's right in there. It's a little bit of calculation, but we can do it. And improving it needs to be a component of your fundraising plan. Stewardship needs to be built into that plan. It's not an afterthought. It's something there. It's a critical area, because keeping donors is frankly a lot cheaper than acquiring new ones. So let's make it a priority. Pointer number 4, evaluate your events and go deeper than just net income. Evaluate those events, go deeper than just net income. This is the tool I like to use here. This was created by my friends Alice Ferris and Jim Anderson with Goalbusters Consulting. We list our events on the left side, and maybe we also list some event ideas we have, potential new things, maybe something that was suggested by a committee member or board member, and we evaluate them on these 5 metrics. Potential revenue. How much can we make? Effort. How much work would this take? Likely success. Can we pull this off? And the 2 that I really love, uniqueness. Is this something really unique, or is it another golf tournament? Golf tournament is a 1. Right? Annual dinner banquet is like a 1. Something very different, unique just to us that we created can get closer to a 10. And finally, mission match. Based on what we do, people we serve, does this make sense? Does this make sense? If we're a library, does it make sense to hold a golf tournament? Probably not. I mean, most do, but we then need to infuse our mission into that golf tournament somehow. Can we have some kind of a mission moment or testimonial or something going on there? So what's that mission match look like? This shows you what you should be doing and shouldn't be doing. Maybe the event that shows up as like a 38 out of 50, we want to double down on. And the one that's a 10, maybe goes away or we kind of minimize a little bit. Just do those things. So I saw a question pop in here. Logan asked, how do you work on improving donor retention rate through stewardship without needing a huge investment? Yeah, so you don't have to spend a ton of money on stewardship, but you do need to kind of map out that donor experience. So what's that donor experience look like? We have something we call the fundraising law of 7, basically stating that there should be 7 touch points between each ask. They want to hear from us 7 times where we're just saying, thank you, here's what's going on with the organization, here's what we did with your money, before we say, hey, will you give again? So mapping that out, and the beauty is everything counts. So our gift acknowledgement letter, we send them, especially if maybe it's personalized. We can do a quick thank you email as soon as we get the gift. Maybe we have a newsletter, maybe an email newsletter, social. All of it can count. It's just a matter of have they seen it? And some things you can do that don't cost a ton of money. I'm looking for my sample file. Here we go. Let's dig into the sample file, see if we can find something. You know, postcards. I love postcards. You know, our mailboxes have been filled with them the last couple of weeks because of that darn election that killed so many trees, right? Jumbo postcards work really well for us too. No, they don't cost a ton. You know, you are the apple of our eye. There's a little summary with a testimonial on the back. You know, economical way. One of my favorite ones with it, there's a company out of Florida called Think Shapes that they do die cut postcards. So you can send an owl, an ice cream sundae, a school bus, a pineapple. They have all these dies. If they already have a die, it doesn't really cost much more. And this literally comes in your mailbox. It's got a mail panel right on it. There you can see the mail panel. So people, I've done this and had donors call me saying, oh my gosh, I was working for an arts organization, so I mailed a violin. It's a violin like this big. I didn't even know you could do that. So I had donors calling me and we had great little conversations. So this is economical. Let me see if, got one more here quickly. Of course, I'm not gonna find it. One of my favorite topics here. So, oh, the heart. I love the heart. Works great for a lot of organizations. But one thing that, hope I didn't lose it. No, here it is. All right, this is probably the cheapest, easiest one. So this right here, we see it. It is a 1/3 sheet of cardstock, double-sided, printed on the office printer. Like it's not that thick. So the front is this, the back is this, and it says, it's been a fun-filled summer. Because of your support, kids are having fun in the sun, learning about science and nature, reading books, volunteering in our community, and enjoying nutritious and healthy food. Next up, back to school. You make all this and more possible. Little note that says, thanks, Chad, from the person I knew. We threw that in an envelope, stamp, right? Didn't have to pay for printing, just the postage and a little bit of time. So there's these kind of things. Favorite topic of mine, sorry, we're on a little diversion here. We also walk around with these. So we have high resolution cameras and video cameras with us at all times. Snap a photo of someone holding up a poster saying thank you, email it to a donor. Say, thanks so much. We just launched the new program. We couldn't do it without you. Little record. Hey there, Sally. It's Chad from ABC Organization. Thanks so much. We just got your donation. We couldn't do what we do without you. You mean the world to us. Took 10 seconds. It's going to take me probably 60 seconds to figure out how to send it, either text or email or whatever, but it doesn't take that much time. It doesn't take money. It just takes a little bit of time sometimes. All right, I'm going to get off my high horse there. I saw somebody asking for the company. Throw that in chat here. That is Think Shapes Mail and ask for Jim O'Brien. All right, that will pop right up if you Google that. So, all right, let's get back on topic here. So thank you for the fabulous question there, Logan. It's that little things. It's thinking through that donor experience. What do we want that to look like for our organization? Okay, That's our analysis. Let's look at which channels are performing best, has the highest return on investment. Let's look at our donor retention rate, make sure it's a priority, make sure improving it is part of the plan. Maybe that means budgeting for a postcard or two, or a few things, or pooling in some volunteers, having a stewardship committee that's going to help us with this. We can use volunteers to do a lot of these touch points. Thank you calls, I didn't even mention them, those are great ways too. Board thank you calls are more effective than staff thank you calls because they're volunteers. So including that, and then taking a close look at those events. What's most effective? What's the best fit for us? And what are we going to do going forward? From there, we're ready to plan. But we're going to plan simply. Plan simply. I want you to look at all that analysis you've done and create a list. Ask, what do I want to stop doing? What just has a low return and doesn't really make sense? What do I want to decrease doing? Maybe we need to do it, but it doesn't really give a high return. Maybe it's like a third-party event that we have to participate in to keep somebody happy, but we don't get much from it. So maybe we just want to put the minimum effort in there possible. For some of you, one of those just happened. I'm not going to say the name, but it's out there. What do I want to maintain doing? What do I want to keep doing? It just kind of works. I don't think there's a lot more growth potential there, but it works. So let's keep on the train. What do I want to increase doing? What is really working that if we kind of doubled down on, we could get an even better return? And what do I want to start doing? What ideas have we gotten in the last year? We need to always be learning. Thank you all for being here today, your commitment to learning. We need to do it throughout the year and just have this idea folder, this spark file of things that could potentially work for our organization. If I had more capacity, if I had more time, if we didn't have to do this other thing, what would I maybe think of starting or trying? So that's our analysis. We have that. I usually just take a legal pad and I've got these categories, I'm scribbling things in. Those are the bones. That's the framework for my plan. So pointer number 5, use a simplified planning template and don't print it. So I'm going to share 2 different versions, 2 different ways, and it's completely based on your style, your boss's or development chair or board chair's preference, whatever it is, but 2 formats that aren't 18 pages that can really get the job done. The first one is kind of a simplified version of that. So for each strategy, each way we're planning to raise money, we say, why? I like to give 1 sentence on why we're doing it. Then we have a simple plan, the how, 1 paragraph, the timetable, when, who, that responsible party, and the projected expense and the projected income. So what's that look like? I have this template on the resources page for you. Starts out in the beginning with last year's results and listing the return on investment right there, so folks can understand our rationale. And there's this year's plan. We have both our fundraising goal and our retention goal. Then we go into each channel, each way we're going to raise money. So here is the box for direct mail. So for strategy is direct mail, we want to increase it. We want to increase it. Why? Direct mail is one of our largest areas of income with one of the highest returns on investment. Okay, we did that analysis, we figured it out. What's the plan? We're going to send our annual appeal per our normal schedule, and we're going to launch a spring appeal as well. Timetable, appeal 1 is mailed by April 30th, appeal 2 by November 30th. Who? Director of Development, projected expense, $8,750, income, $75,000. Direct mail is done. Yes, there's a lot more nuance behind this. There's probably a timetable that if we're going to mail appeal 1 by April 30th, we probably need to start it by, March 1st, the latest, to get it through the process. So, but that doesn't have to live directly in the plan. We can just get the big pieces here. And there can be sub plans or timelines or those kind of things, whatever we need. That can live in our personal task management system. It doesn't have to be in the organization's overall plan. And as I keep saying, donor retention, increasing donor retention needs to be a part of every plan. So in this format, we simply would create one of these grid boxes for each way we raise money, probably be about 5 to 10 of them, and they feed in to create this overall fundraising goal on the front page. much simpler. People will actually look and read this. It's a usable document, and we don't PDF it. But if you want to go even simpler, you can go all in one page. And I have this template for you on the resources page too. It's small, so I'll walk you through it. The beauty of this is that we can get column totals. And our accountants and financial people, they will love that format. It's all in Excel. So column 1 is our funding focus area, our broad category. Then what we raised last year, the goal for this year, the percentage change, and then we're going to fill in very brief strategies and tactics. So for that direct mail example, strategy 1 would be year-end appeal. Strategy 2 would be mid-year appeal. Tactics would be, mailing by April 30th, starting preparation March 1st. We can get a little more granular there. And then we have our expense column, our deadline, and then for the who, we can just do initials. I usually say do the position initials rather than the person. So if the person changes, it's still tied to the role, and any kind of notes. So feeds in very simply. I just find that we don't need the huge verbose plan. We need something simple that we can actually use. So some people like this format, some like the other. There are other formats out there. I just encourage you to look for something simple that will actually get used and you won't dread putting together. Pointer number 6, include 2 new ideas in your plan each year. 2 new ideas. I said that last piece is, what do we want to add? What do we want to start? This keeps us innovative, right? This kind of counters the status quo. My friend Mark Pittman, the fundraising coach, says the biggest risk for nonprofits in the 21st century is to not take any risks. The status quo, doing the same old thing year in, year out, that's going to eventually lead to not getting the same return. So I say you need 2 new ideas each year. I like 2 because then we can kind of start one right at the beginning of the year. Typically, once we dig out from year-end gifts and get all those thank yous out, there's usually a little lull in like mid-January to March-ish, where there's maybe a little window to try something new. Not many of us have events in there. I always did, but I was that's why I did. I could get audience at that time of year. But 2 ideas. And then the second one is either we're going to do it later in the year or it's there in case the first one just doesn't really work out. We have those ideas and we build them into the plan. So we kind of have this paradox of risk that we're looking there. One of the great thought leaders I'd like to follow, James Clear, talks a lot about this. So we want this diversified mix of fundraising. But if you put all your eggs in one basket, you lose the basket, you lose it all. We rely all on this one big grant. And then we get a reduction and we're stuck. We're scrambling. But we can also get too diversified. If we put our eggs in too many baskets, the more baskets you have to manage, the less energy you can put in each one. It's risky to do things halfway. So you got to find that right mix of maybe 5-ish strategies that we can really do well. We don't have to do everything. I teach Fundraising 101 at 2 colleges. This is the textbook right here. Nonprofit Fundraising 101, edited by Heyman, has 26 chapters, 26 different ways to fundraise. No one should do all of them. You have to figure out that right mix for your organization. What makes sense for us? What can we focus on where we're going to get that good return? Pointer number 7, surround yourself with fundraising inspiration. So where do these 2 new ideas come from each year? You need to perpetually expose yourself to fundraising ideas. My favorite way is just read. Just read. Read fundraising literature, read nonprofit literature, read business literature, read general news, read fiction. I don't care, just read. I've gotten fun event element ideas from fiction. Things can work. I mean, how many fundraising events has The Great Gatsby inspired over the years? So just exposing yourself to new ideas, new content is the key. One of my favorite tools here, I'll confess, when I was in your shoes, when I was doing fundraising on a day-to-day basis, trying to cram, 60-hour work week into 40 hours, I did not do a great job of reading. I had the best of intentions. I subscribed to stuff and it would pile up on my desk, get higher and higher. And eventually I would look at it and say, there's no way, and just shove it into the trash can and start from scratch. And I subscribed to all these email newsletters and these thought leaders, it's great ideas. And they would go to a folder and it would build up and up and up and up. And then eventually I'd hit Control A, delete, and all would go away. I just didn't have the time. What I found helped me back then, and I still use it, was a tool called Pocket. Pocket. So Pocket is a browser extension. And anytime you come across an article you want to read, you just hit that little V red icon, which is in your bar, and it saves it to your Pocket. And Pocket is an app and a website that is just going to have a chronological list of every article you've saved. And you're saying, well, what's the big deal? You're just putting it in a separate box. The beauty is it's always with you. You know, Pocket lives on my phone. So I started using all those little moments of time. You know, I'm in the waiting room at the dentist and they're running 20 minutes late. I'm sitting outside my kid's school waiting to pick them up. You know, just a little time. All the times where you normally would just grab the phone and maybe revert to social media, you know, scrolling, taking those little time and reading articles, little things. It's amazing how much reading time you can fit in with just those tiny little blocks. And this actually, it takes all the ads out, makes it a real nice reading experience. You can customize text size, all kinds of stuff. It's free. There's a premium version. I don't know what it does. I've never used it, but great little tool to just kind of squeeze in some reading into a very full day. If you are not a member of the Association of Fundraising Professionals and you do a lot of fundraising, I highly recommend it. I've been a member most of my career. As I mentioned, I'm a past president, the greatest title, of the Central Pennsylvania chapter. So we have a great local group of nearly about 150 fundraising professionals. And that is the true value of AFP. It's that networking, having that sounding board. Hey, have you tried this? Supporting each other, getting involved. So they also have fabulous materials, including Advancing Philanthropy magazine, which I actually this year have the honor of chairing the editorial advisory committee for. So great place. It's a little bit of an investment. They do have a small organization membership fee, which is reduced, but encourage you to check them out. If you want a free one, Sophie, the Showcase of Fundraising Innovation and Inspiration. So Sophie is at sophie.org, sofii.org, SOFII.org. And this is exactly what it says it is. It's a showcase of great fundraising. So you can type in, you know, thank you letter sample, and it's going to show you 50 examples of great thank you letters. And a lot of the things too, especially like their direct mail pieces, they're written more as case studies. So it's going to show you all the various pieces, and then it's going to say what the results were and how the change was. So it's kind of a, you know, I just need a new idea. I need to do something fresh. I want to try something different. And it's also UK based, but the examples are worldwide. So we can get some kind of different concepts of what's worked elsewhere. American fundraising works, but I sometimes see some great examples from overseas. Our Canadian friends do a great job. The Brits do a great job. The Aussies do a great job. So just broadening our horizons of what's working somewhere and maybe can work here. As I said, books are great. Yeah, I keep grabbing things off my book stack back here. Here's a couple of my favorite titles, and will post my full recommended reading list on the resources page. That top one, especially, great little book. The Fundraiser's Guide to Irresistible Communications by Jeff Brooks. It's like about $20. You can read it in an afternoon, but really teaches you how to write well for fundraising. Okay, pointer number 8. I think it's our last one, and then we're going to get to your questions and comments. Be prepared to make the case for change. So we can come up with all these great ideas. We can have all this fundraising inspiration, ideas, things out there. We can put it into a plan, but we may still run into Mr. Grumpy Pants. It's not always a guy, it's not always an old person, but somebody that's been around a long time and says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or don't rock the boat. Or the one that really gets me, that's the way we've always done it, right? So if you're going to ask for change, you can show change, you're going to need to have something to kind of back it up. And that's where I like to show them the numbers, right? So show them those tools we use. Show them the solicitation performance index and all the ROI calculations. Show them the event grid that shows their event with a score of 23 and the one you want to do with a score of 42 and why this will probably work better. Just have those tools. Talk about donor retention and why we need them to make thank you calls and notes and be a part of this process, and how board members are more productive than us. I don't have it in here today, but the statistic is 39%. Donors that receive a thank you call from a board member within a few weeks after making their gift or increase their next donation by an average of 39%. That shows you that those work. That comes out of research by Penelope Burke, donor-centered fundraising, 40,000 household survey looking at giving trends. So show them the numbers, explain it to them. Your fundraising plan is done, but our planning process is not done. You need to systematize. Systematize. It doesn't go on the shelf, it goes into your system. So we need to take all those steps, get them into whatever our work plan is. We can't just create it, sit it aside. So I kind of have two options here, two ways to get it into your system, whatever works for your organizations. First off, make it someone's job. So this is kind of the low-tech way. Somebody has it in their job description that every week they review the plan and they prompt the responsible parties regarding what is coming due in the next 60 days. Right? It's not, hey, you got to do this. It's just letting you know this is on the radar. Here's the due date, link to the plan, something simple. Or if you have a shared task management system, that can work too. You add everything in, it's there, it sets up, we can do recurring tasks. The issue is if the plan changes, then you got to go in and change all those tasks. So I sometimes like to do a blended model where maybe it's somebody's job to put in the tasks for the next 60 days into everybody's task management calendar or something like that. But we still have flexibility for later in the year in case we need to change things a little bit. All right, then you are done. It is systematized, it's worked out. We've done our analysis, we've done our plan. We can be done, we know that it exists, and it lives right in there. It lives in the computer. Everybody that needs to can access it, but it doesn't live on that bookshelf. That's our planning process. That's our analysis. It's not overly complicated, but we're going to look at some key things, get the key data we need to make sure we're taking our organization to the next level and always evolving our fundraising. I'm going to close with a couple additional fundraising resources, and then we'll open it up for any questions. There's the book I held up and showed you. I always like to give a book recommendation. So that's Jim Greenfield, Evaluating and Managing the Fund Development Process. This is kind of like the old school fundraising, what worked, how it is. It's not very techy because most of that stuff didn't exist, but sometimes it's just great to go back to the roots and make sure we're respecting those older traditions. I go by Fundraiser Chad on all the social channels. So if you'd like to connect, I'm always sharing tips, what I'm up to, what's out there, cutting trends in philanthropy. So feel free to connect with me pretty much on every channel. I don't do the TikTok. I haven't figured out what I'm supposed to do on there yet. I'm not dancing for you all. So, but everywhere else, you can find me with Fundraiser Chad. My company, Productive Fundraising, we do board and staff fundraising training, executive coaching for fundraisers and executive directors. And more, we are doing onboarding coaching for new fundraisers that were hired because they're passionate for the cause. They're great people, but they've never fundraised because it's really hard to hire a good fundraiser. There just aren't a ton out there. We sometimes have to make them. For those of you that have no one to talk shop with, there's no one else around that does fundraising. I put together a private Facebook group. It's called the Fundraising Buzz Fest. It's made up of about 800 fundraising professionals, executive directors, board members, volunteers, people that do fundraising in a small shop. And they just want to say, hey, has anyone tried this? Anybody have a sample for this? We're thinking of doing this, or my board chair wants to do this. Will that actually work? What should I say? All those kind of questions. It's just fundraisers helping fundraisers. That's on the resources page. And then I do a free monthly webinar as well. So my next one will be June 16th at noon Eastern, and we are going to dig into those events. So really do a deep dive on fundraising events, what's working, what isn't, how do we integrate technology now that we've done some virtual events, and what's it look like in the future, just kind of taking that deep dive. I just did this presentation for AFP's International Conference, so I'm going to do it as a webinar on June 16th, and the sign up is there. Finally, the only thing I really sell online is my All Access Pass, and you can learn more about that on the resources page as well. It basically gives you access to everything for low monthly fee. All right. With that, I am going to take a lovely sip of LaCroix while I hear who has a question here, and see if you have any questions about the fundraising planning process or anything else related to fundraising for that matter. You can type it in the chat, or I believe you should be able to unmute and ask as well.
Well, thanks, Chad, for this. This has been super helpful. I guess I have two kind of questions for you, and maybe they're specific to kind of the Systematize bit. So how does that work for you? Like if we're an entirely nonprofit, or we're an entirely like volunteer organization, and we do have like a part-time office person, how does it work to systematize without, like if I work full-time, but I volunteer with this organization, you know, how do I balance those two things, right? Where like I have my job during the day, but I also might have these tasks, you know, and how do I like, you know, how do you keep people responsible
still get it done
when you're not paying
them? So I was just training a board up in Indiana, PA last evening, and this topic came up. And we kind of brainstormed it a little bit about, you know, what could they do of, yeah, I got a day job, but I still have to do all this stuff. And there were various suggestions, but the one that seemed to resonate the most with them, and I actually do it for some of my volunteer work, was that I time block an hour early morning on the weekend. So like on the weekend, I'm going to get up, have a cup of coffee, read the news, and then I'm going to do like an hour of my volunteer work. So I'm a scout leader. So my scout time is then. Like the house is quiet, everybody else is sleeping in, I'm kind of an early riser. Somebody else said they're a night owl, so they might do it late at night. But the key was really having a dedicated time block, like each week or maybe every other week, that they could kind of do those tasks. So then they could just have like an email folder where they put all that stuff in, and they knew they would get to it within a week and not keep the organization down. But yeah, definitely tough to balance that if it's, you know, full-time day gig takes you elsewhere. But that's how I balance it, and seemed like that group was pretty much in favor of it too.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I guess, and then the follow-up, you know, is it seems like some of your suggestions were moving a little bit away from kind of the analog of like, don't necessarily print things, don't have things that are static. How do you kind of fold that in if you have a board who just like maybe doesn't have the same technological literacy that others do? You know, and I'm saying that in the most respectful way, but it's not like, that's just kind of what I've run into too, where there's people who like the paper, but I get what you're saying about like it when you have that, it kind of forces you to
and I did have a board like that. My first development director position was at the Antique Auto Museum, so you can imagine my board was, you know, skewed a little higher in age, a little lower tech. I mean, this was also 15 years ago, so add that in and that complexity. So I actually would print the plan just for them to look at it. But we had a policy that board packets were turned back in. So literally, like I stood by the door as they left and recollected the board packets. And then we kind of sent out, we had a board portal. So all they had to do was go to one website. And we didn't password protect it. We didn't view it as, you know, super confidential, but we didn't link it anywhere. So they just knew that if they went to our site dash like board, this would pop up. And then there was just a link directly to every document they would need kind of right there. So if they just went to one site, it was there and they could get to it. Kind of tried to simplify the process a little bit. I don't know if either of those will work, but yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much.
About 3 more minutes if there are any other questions. Comments, outrage.
Hi, Chad. So I'm just new at the nonprofit world, and my question is like, with the expenses that I'm starting to see from taking on my first fundraising event soon, how do you leverage your return on investment? Like sometimes going in, you don't really know how much things are going to cost, and with the rise of costs happening,
Yeah.
how do you kind of balance that out?
Yeah, I mean, that's the inherent risk with fundraising events. It's a little bit of a risk with everything right now because our mail prices with paper and things have been ridiculous too. It used to be nice and steady for us. But so first off, I'll say the average return on investment, not factoring in staff time for a special event, is typically around 50%. So typically you're going to spend about half of what you make just to make the event happen. It's why events aren't necessarily a great fundraisers, but they're really good at getting the word out. So sometimes they're better friend raisers than they actually are fundraisers. So, I mean, taking that budget, looking at what's there, actually having a budget, if you don't have it estimated out, and it's going to be really loose this year with all the crazy price shifts, but just kind of taking an estimate of where it's at, aiming for, that 50% mark, and then trying to hold things. And if something comes in crazy high, what can I cut or change to try to keep it at that 50% or below mark? Really hard this year. If you don't have a budget, I have a budget template on the free fundraising resources library on my website. So if you just go productivefundraising.com, up to the top, free resources in the library, there's an event section which has like an event plan, event budget, a couple other tools that can help with that a little bit. But trying to do an event that only use like 10-20% of proceeds for expenses for the event, nobody wants to go to that because you just can't produce an event that is enjoyable. So you just kind of know that we're aiming in that maybe 40 to 50% range and see what I can do. We have to really closely monitor those event budgets this year for sure. So I don't know if I directly answered that, but hopefully I gave you a helpful resource or two.
Yes, and just one quick question on top of that. Out of all the expenses, do you think like a location rental is pretty much the highest out of everything?
It depends if you're feeding them or not. If you're feeding them, that's going to be highest in my mind. And if you are feeding them and buying them from the venue, a lot of times you can get the site rental fee waived as long as your food bill is high enough. But there's a lot of nuance there. So, and there's some places that will like allow nonprofit and community groups to use it for free. Just kind of asking around. If you want to send me a follow-up question, I'm open to that. It's just chad@productivefundraising.com. If you want to give me the specifics of your event and what you're looking to, and if I can help you directly there, I'll be happy to do that. So.
Thank you.
All right, folks, I think we are at time, so I'm going to kick it back to Ashley for the wrap up and say thank you.